You can walk in to a pub and you can watch for 5 minutes and you can tell who is good, who is bad, and who can be changed just from the way they are. There's good managers, you will see them. You can walk in and you will see a manager who will keep eye contact with you whilst you're talking to them, but then you'll also see their eyes flick because they're keeping an eye on what everything is happening and they know what is happening within their pub.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Burnt Chef Journal, a hospitality-specific podcast dedicated to challenging mental health stigma and conversations designed to inspire a new, healthier, happier, and more sustainable hospitality profession. The Burnt Chef Journal is proudly sponsored by Planday, the workforce management system that helps your business give a shift. From scheduling rotas ahead to tracking time and attendance, managing your team's careers to managing your budgets, Planday has everything you need to make your day work in one easy-to-use platform. Try it yourself with a 30-day free trial only at planday.com. Get your shift together with Planday. I'm very, very excited about this week's episode because I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend. That is Ian Lay. Ian Lay, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very, very well, sir. Very well. I usually fluff most introductions I do, so I tend to get guests to introduce themselves. But I would like to just preface this with just a little introduction of my own for you, which is Ian is a hero for representing the right values, the culture, the ideas of a progressive industry. But more than that, he puts himself through most torturous events to raise awareness and raise funds for the Burnt Chef project, including marathons and ultras. But I think it'd be fair to say, Ian, by your own admittance, you're not your average ultra marathon runner, hey?
I think it's fair to say that I'm not your average runner, full stop. My lifestyle really does not fit with a nice, athletic, healthy persona, but it's fun and I like to challenge myself. So marathons and ultra marathons just are part of the course. And I keep saying I'm going to retire from them at some point, but I think I just keep lying to myself when I say that.
Well, please don't, because you're inspiring countless others. So Ian and I first met at the second Burnt Chef Gala and the Mental Health Awards that we had in March in London. And you were there because one of your friends had reached out and said, look, Ian's an absolute hero. He's running a marathon to raise funds for the Burnt Chef project. Can he come along and be part of the evening? I was like, of course. And we met, and it was quite late in the evening. And you said, I've just done the marathon. He said, it went really, really well. And I think I might do an ultra for you. And I said, you don't need to. You've done incredible work already. And then literally less than 5 minutes later, he was like, yep, I'm doing an ultra. Glass still in hand. I'm doing an ultra.
Yeah, so I really have to stop signing up to things when I've had cider or wine, because that's generally when it happens. So I had done the Brighton Marathon, and when you're training for a marathon, you're meant to be quite strict with yourself. You're meant to train at certain times, meant to go certain distances, try to do certain speeds, eat the right food, drink the right drinks. And when I was training, I was going out, I was running quite regularly. I certainly wasn't fueling properly. I certainly wasn't drinking the right stuff. But then it all finished, and you have the high for about 1 or 2 days of, I've just done a marathon. And then you slump, because you can't go running because you're still in too much pain and you've lost your routine. And it turned out that I spent about 2 weeks just sat there, either at home on my own or in the pub getting pissed. And I was like, I need something else. I need to challenge myself. And with my marathon time, I realized I'm never going to be the fastest runner. I'm certainly never going to be the fastest runner. So let's try adding distance onto it. So I thought, okay, why not do an ultra marathon? And so did a bit of Googling, and I found one that went all along the Thames Path, started in Fulham area and would have ended up in Henley. And so I signed up for it. I was like, oh my God, this is like 3 months away. I'm still dying from an actual marathon. How the hell am I going to do this? So I was just like, okay, let's start running again. Let's start blogging again. Let's start fundraising again, because when you're fundraising, when you're blogging, you're putting it out there and you have to go and train. You have to put some effort in. And it's really quite difficult finding training plans for ultramarathons because no one's stupid enough to do them, apart from a few people. And so I just went for it and turned up on the day and I did it. I am pleased with how I did, but not overly pleased with how I did, because it ended up being 53 kilometers. I did it in 7 hours, 55 minutes, which is incredible. And I think it was 27th out of 147 people, which is phenomenal.
That's amazing.
But the bit that I was really gutted with was, because I wasn't sure about it, because I wasn't confident enough, I was advertising to everyone that I'm doing a 50k ultramarathon. What most people don't realize, I think possibly 5 people in the entire world knew, was I had actually signed up to do 50k on the Saturday and another 50k on the Sunday. I was going to do 2 ultras. I was going to do 100k over a weekend. Unfortunately, it got to the point that after the 50k, I was so badly injured that I was advised not to do the following day. It would have put myself and others at risk, especially when you're running along little trail paths, difficult to get there if you needed emergency help or anything like that. So whilst everyone's like, oh, that's incredible, you've done this, I'm just like, well, yeah, I've done that, but I didn't actually achieve what I wanted to achieve. I wanted to do the 100k, which is why I'm doing the 100k next year. 2025, I'm going to be doing another ultra marathon. Not so much to raise money. It's one of those, I didn't achieve it first time, I might as well try again. And this time I have a bit more experience doing it. I know a bit more about running. I know about rest breaks. So when you do a normal marathon, you start, you run, you walk a bit, you run some more, and you sprint at the end and cry at the end that you've done it, and then have a pint and a burger. With ultra marathons, they actually have rest points, and you're meant to stop for like between 20 minutes and an hour to refuel, to make sure your body's right, things like that, because it is such a strain on your body. I hadn't factored that in. So when I was stopping for this 20 minutes to then restart, you're just like, your body doesn't know how to restart. And it was so difficult. And that's what actually caused a lot of my injuries during it. And so, the day after, when my friends picked me up, my knee was bandaged up because I just couldn't put pressure on it. I was having to wear compression socks to stop any swelling in my feet. It was hilarious to see me try to move the following day. Absolutely hilarious. One of my friends literally had to carry my bag into my house for me because I just couldn't do anything.
I'm not surprised. So similarly to yourself, I'm not a professed runner. In fact, I spend more time going backwards, I would say, in my running technique than I do going forwards. But rather than push through and just do it anyway, I give up. I don't run. I choose not to run. And for me, it's hideous. For someone to have done a marathon and 53k, and yes, you're understandably disappointed that you didn't achieve the goal that you set out to do. But that sheer volume of running and the stress that it puts on your brain and your body is just incredible. It's completely understandable. You couldn't walk or function for a while afterwards.
Yeah, and it is a huge strain on your body, and not just physically, mentally, it's a huge strain. So where everyone else was celebrating that they had done 50k, I felt let down because I knew I couldn't complete the goal that I had wanted to. When I did the Brighton Marathon, I hit the wall a lot earlier than I thought I was going to. I thought I was going to struggle at about mile 20 and then struggle for 2 miles. And those last 4 miles, you're just like, ugh, you're so close to the finish line, you just go, and that's where the crowds pick up and you feed off their energies. But I hit the wall at about 14 miles and I was like, can I just quit? Can I just walk the rest? And there was part of you that said you could, but you've also set yourself a challenge to finish it. You've got a time in mind that you want, and people have fundraised. They're going to want their bloody money back if you quit now, and you can't do that. So you have to just push through. And that's one of the reasons I fundraise when I run, is because I can't just give people money back. I can't take money away from amazing organization because I can't be asked to finish a race for it. So yeah, it is demanding, and mentally running, you can feel great. Running, you can feel shit. You have every emotion when you're running. There are times where I will go and do a 5K park run and feel really let down that it was an awful run. There are times that I go and do park run and I am buzzing afterwards. There are times when you kind of want to cry because you've got through it despite having been out the night before or anything like that. And mentally, it's just all over the place. And that's one of the reasons I do run, is because for me, 90% of the time, there's an amazing rush afterwards. There's an amazing feeling of achievement, of happiness, of joy afterwards. And during it, sometimes I just want to bloody cry. I want to stop, curl up in a corner and cry. I did a run yesterday and I showed my friend at the pub, and she's a former British athlete. I showed her what I had done yesterday, and she's like, is this therapy or self-harm? And I was like, the way my knee's feeling, I think it's self-harm. But yeah, but afterwards, felt amazing. During, oh my God, I had pains in areas I didn't know my body had. So it can be quite difficult.
Yeah, I can appreciate, but I can't understand. My friends do the Bath Half every year, and every year they say, you're going to do it. And I watch the runners go by and I go, I possibly could do it physically, but I don't think my resilience lies in other areas. I don't think that I would have the mental strength to be able to push myself around. My knee starts to hurt or my leg starts to hurt 5 miles in, and I go, oh, you can give up, Chris. You can just stop. No one's forcing you to do this. And I don't think that I have the capacity to be able to push through that. So the fact that you've managed to conquer that, or at least, conquer, it's still there, but you've managed to find a way of dealing with that and pushing forward, I think is incredible.
But you say that, but you did the Sea to Summit and you got to the top of that big hill. I can't remember which mountain it was, Snowdon or something.
Snowdon, yeah.
Yes, you got to the top. It's almost the same feeling of, actually, I've just bloody accomplished something. And climbing Snowdon isn't easy. And it's uphill, which I'm pretty sure I'm allergic to hills, but you did it and you get that sense of achievement at the end. And that's one of the other reasons you have to get to the end of a marathon. You have to get to the end of the 5K. Sometimes dropping out doesn't matter. Sometimes it's the right thing to do because mentally you can't go on. Physically, sometimes you do have to just stop yourself. That's a safety thing. That is a safeguarding your own body and well-being. But other times, when you're halfway up that marathon, when you're halfway through that marathon, you've gone halfway, you're closer to the end now, it's just keep going for it. And it doesn't matter how long it takes, just keep going.
Mindset shift. I've read quite a lot of the books that have been produced by the SAS Who Dares Wins teams. And one of them, I think, was saying that the brain automatically, so those negative thought processes, when you're running, when you're doing something challenging, which is, you can't do this, you're going to harm yourself, it's not going to work. They are a defense mechanism of the brain, because the brain realizes that if it continues, it will end up in entropy. It will end up effectively harming itself because it doesn't know that there's an end in sight. So those negative processes, those thoughts that come into your head, are just the brain's way of trying to protect itself. It's selfish. It's a selfish brain. And then with the military and military training, they continue to push and push and push. I mean, I did a survival weekend when I was 17. Plan was to go to Ecuador for 6 months. And there were so many moments, like we got sent around a 3-mile track in the middle of snow in Brecon Beacons with no torch, no phone, no map, nothing, just a hand-drawn thing on your own. So you're disorientated. And you get all the way back to the beginning and they say, what the fuck are you doing back here? I was like, I finished. They were like, you finished when we told you to finish. Off you go again. And every single time you didn't know it was going to be the last time. I ended up doing that for 12 miles on my own, cold, tired, snowing. And the point of that story and the reason why I find that interesting is at the beginning, the first time, the second time, I thought, I can't do this anymore. My brain was telling me, you can't do this. You're not able to do this. But actually, after everything, after going caving and then having to run back to the campsite because the bus deliberately drove off without us whilst we were freezing cold in minus conditions, all of these little things, the brain was telling me that it wasn't possible, but then you can push your body, and the military they push you to the point where you can realize that actually your body has a lot more resilience than perhaps your self-protection brain does, which I find incredibly interesting.
And that's something I found with a lot of people recently. So obviously running club, which I'm sure we'll talk about, Run for the Road, I've said to people, oh yeah, it's just a 5k. And a lot of people are just like, I don't think I can do a 5k. I've never done it before. I don't think I could do it. And then I started training for the Brighton and for marathons. I struggled to do couch to 5k, but I'm in my 40s now. I've had quite a sedentary lifestyle. I've had a lifestyle of generally always working in hospitality industry. So on my feet, enjoying those pints after work, eating the fried food, grazing on chips as your main meal for the day when you're in the kitchen. And I really struggled with couch to 5k. And then at one point I just turned around and went, do you know what? This is really pissing me off. And I turned off couch to 5k. I knew the route was 5k and I was like, let's just do it. And I did. I don't know how. And afterwards I was a mess. I was a fucking sweaty mess, struggling to get back into my car to drive home. But it was one of those mind over matters. Physically, you can do it. It's the mental thing holding you back. And one of my posts nowadays is actually saying, and I've recently emailed one of my old companies saying, can you advertise Run for the Road for us? And I've actually said the hardest part is turning up. The hardest part is starting. Because as soon as you turn up, there's people with you. There's people that will help you along the way. And it doesn't matter about your time. Like I said, I am not the fastest runner. I've run with people that could do it in half the time that we did it. But I've also gone with people who stop and walk. That's fine, because you're still moving. You're still doing something. And if you don't think you can do a 5k, I'm going to prove you wrong. And you're going to prove yourself wrong. And then you're going to feel fucking amazing afterwards. And yeah, so it is there is a massive mental block when it comes to running, when it comes to starting any form of exercise, and not just exercise. I get this a lot in the workplace of there's a mental block stopping me from doing some work. But as soon as it gets close to that deadline, the mental block kind of has to be pushed through, and you just have to write that policy because the law is bloody coming into place. You legally have to have this done. Just get it done. So yeah, there is a huge thing about mental blocks, and it is how to overcome them and push through them. And I found a lot of it through running.
I don't mean this as a cliche, but I think you're incredibly inspiring. I think it's just your ability to commit yourself physically and mentally to these challenges, but both personal growth and also for raising awareness for perhaps the work that we do or for other charitable causes, I think is incredibly inspiring. And I think for those listening to this now who are telling themselves they can't, they shouldn't, they're not the people who could, I think Ian is a prime example of showing that you can. I mean, that, as you say, from going from a couch to 5k and just not finding that that's working for you, and then to be able to go and do that, do the Brighton Marathon, do an ultra, sign yourself up for 100k. It's been a massive, massive mindset shift to show that if you tell yourself you can, then you can. And sometimes obstacles will happen that will stop you, but you have infinite possibilities.
There are infinite possibilities, and sometimes you do just need to challenge yourself. And whether that is a new starter in a bar learning how to pull the difference between pulling a lager and an ale, because if you're 18 and you've never been in before, that is a challenge to you, and that's actually quite worrying because you don't want to waste it, because all the managers are saying stop wasting my stock, be careful, GP, labour, bloody, all that shit. So that's one challenge, and you get over it because you just try doing it. And we all make mistakes, and I am certainly not the best runner. I'm certainly not the best worker. I still know how to spill drinks. I've been doing this industry for 20 to 25 years now. I still struggle to carry a tray with drinks on. They'll get half a pint by the time I get to the table. It's fine. They get a drink. But you just crack on with it because it's got to be done sometimes. When it comes to health and well-being and mental well-being, sometimes you've just got to say, fuck it. Sorry, but sometimes you have to say, fuck it and just go for it. I've seen people in this industry that are scared of confrontation. So getting rid of customers is really difficult for them. And I've been there to support them their first time, been there to support them their second time, the third time. You're leading this, just behind you. Go for it. And they do. And they get rid of that angry customer. And they feel great afterwards because they've just got rid of some shit out of a pub. And they've built from it and they've learned from it and they'll develop their own way of doing it going forward. But they've got through that mental barrier of, I can't confront someone. I can't refuse service. I can't ask someone to leave. They've got through it. And it's just that taking that first step to it. And no matter what you're doing, there is always going to be someone else out there who has gone through it, who can advise you, who can guide you through this. I've had some great managers in my career. Admittedly, I've had some absolutely shockingly appalling managers in my career, but I've had some great ones and I've learned from them. And it is taking that step to change your mindset. And although we're doing the 100K, I'm doing the 100K next year, there's now 3 of us doing the Manchester Marathon next year, which will be fundraising for Burnt Chef.
Yeah.
And the other 2 haven't done marathons before. So it's going to be interesting. They're both going to kick my ass with the time because that's how it's going to work, isn't it? They'll be the first to finish. But it's changing the mindset and saying, actually, yeah, we can do this. We can support each other. We can work together. We can have a laugh along the way. And ultimately, we get to the finish line and we are opening a bottle of wine to celebrate that we have achieved something.
Yeah. As I say, I'm inspired. I know that you've inspired one of our team members, Mika, as well. And I think there was something that came to mind whilst you're talking about perspective and perceptions. And there was a video that I saw yesterday, I think it was, of a spider. When you put a spider on a piece of white paper and you draw a circle around in a Sharpie, the spider won't leave the circle. It's really, really interesting. Very interesting. But in this video, the spider, whilst running around trying to get out of this circle, accidentally stepped over the line. And once he stepped over the line, there was no going back inside that circle. His horizon had been completely expanded. It's a really, really interesting. Check it out on YouTube.
Really cool.
It shows that the only thing that stops us from doing anything in life, whether it's physical activity, whether it's money, whether it's employment, whether it's pursuing your goals, is our mental cages that we put ourselves in. And once we break out of that, anything's possible, right? Anything is possible.
Absolutely anything's possible.
So I'll come to Run for the Road at the end, because I think we should have it at a point in the podcast where it's the last thing that's on people's minds. And if you guys are listening to this and you've stuck with us for this long as well, then do stick around for Run to the Road, because it's an incredible initiative. And again, another prime example of Ian going, I'm going to do this and get to this number, and this is what we're going to do. And fuck, he's well on his way. But you mentioned you've been in hospitality now for 20 odd years, and specifically within HR. You said that you've had some incredible managers and some really shit managers. So firstly, I'd like to know, what makes a shit manager? What makes someone who is culturally and leadership poor?
So over the 20 years, management styles have changed, partly because of employment laws coming into place saying they have to do things, partly because of the change in the culture in hospitality. You go back 20 years, and I remember when I was working for Wetherspoons, my first year of working for Wetherspoons, you could get a gin and tonic for 99 pence. Now, if you try and get a gin and tonic anywhere for 99, if you try and get a gin and tonic for less than a fiver anywhere, you're struggling. So the culture has changed because things are more expensive. Back when I started, our pre-drinks were in the pub before you go to a club. Now people pre-drink at home. So things have changed. And so managers have had to, or should have changed with it. As for ship management, I have been micromanaged before, and I'm just like, I don't need micromanaging. If you are employing me as an HR professional, then that's because I have an HR background, I have a qualification in it, I have read the employment law, I have read best practice, I read my CIPD journals. You need to trust that I will produce you a document which will work. And I'm happy to work in partnership with management to create it, to make sure it works for that company. But please don't come in and say, well, this is what we had 20 years ago. Well, things have changed in 20 years. We don't need that anymore. So please don't micromanage me on that. And when it comes to me being operational, because I've always stayed operational as well, and I actually started off operationally and spent the majority of my time in hospitality operationally, please don't come in and say, oh, table 3 need to be served. I know they need to be fucking served. They're not just sat there to look pretty, you dickheads. Excuse my language, but I know what I'm doing. So don't micromanage me. And that's one of the worst things you can do, because when you are operational, yes, if you're in the kitchen, you get a call for what is needed and you respond. And if you say it's going to be 3 minutes, you make sure it's 3 minutes. If it's not going to be 3 minutes, you let your head chef know. You let whoever's running the past know. That head chef doesn't need to be on you constantly. Your front of house manager doesn't need to be on you constantly to do it, because you have your own little systems of how to do it. You give me a section in a restaurant, every table will be served. I would say perfectly, but that's blatantly not going to happen with me. But they will all be served and they'll all leave as happy as I can make them. Don't tell me that they need serving. Don't tell me that they need desserts. I know they need desserts. I've just cleared their fucking mains. So don't micromanage. Also, don't talk down to people. Like, everyone is a human being. Show a little bit of respect. And I think this will sound really odd. Going back to 20, 25 years ago, when I was a student at the time, when I started, no one spoke down to me as an employee. No one spoke down to the team around me. We respected each other. But it seems as there's been a shift in the culture where managers will speak down to new starters and team members because they feel they're entitled to, they feel a sense of power over them. No, we're making you money, mate. We're the ones that then the guests aren't leaving happy because you're the manager. They're leaving happy because we're doing our job. So don't speak down to us. It's rude. It's patronizing. And we're making you fucking money. So shut up. Show some respect to us. And yes, they're bringing in laws for respecting people. The right to disconnect's coming in probably next year. We've just had sexual harassment law pass. We've just had a tipping act pass and things like that. And what makes bad management is those people that have actually influenced these laws coming in. So I've had to, with the tipping act coming in, sexual harassment law coming in, or anti-sexual harassment law coming in, I had to write policies for them. Now, I've worked for some good companies, or I've managed places, and when it came to tips, at no point would I turn around and say, actually, you're not getting tips because you weren't very good. Actually, I'm taking a £5 out of your tips because you smashed some plates tonight. No, you bloody earned them. You get an equal share. Everyone who worked, there we are, split it up equally. So writing that policy was quite difficult because I feel I've always been fair with them. Writing a policy that stops sexual harassment, well, sorry, what bloody industry, what bloody place would allow it in the first place? Those with bad managers, those with shit management allow it. And they're the ones that are affecting the laws that are changing, that are coming up. Show some respect. As soon as you start respecting your team, you actually get a lot of respect from your team and you stop being a shit manager. You're not going to allow sexual harassment in the workplace. You're not going to constantly contact people on their time off, because although there's no law with right to disconnect at the moment, I would never dream of harassing people on their time off. If I have to message them saying, can you pick up a shift? And they say no, I'm not going to be like, well, you've let me down, which some people would do. No, that's their time off. they're rotated off. They're allowed a life. Don't assume that their life is working. Yes, so many people are on 0-hour contracts and they can play that game, which again, that's hopefully going to change the exploitative side of things. But just don't be a knob about it. Again, sorry for swearing, but this really, really winds me up. Ship managers are making life harder in this industry because government is now having to come in and put laws in place to protect the workers. Now, if managers did their jobs, respected their team, actually thought about it and showed respect and didn't allow sexual harassment and were able to communicate properly with their team, these laws would not be necessary. Over the next few years, there's going to be 88 changes or potentially 88 changes in employment law. And as an HR practitioner, that's a hell of a lot of work to do. But how about just get rid of those that are allowing it in the first place? Tell them, you're a ship manager, get out of our industry. Go and work somewhere else. Find them now. Don't bring in the laws. So many places are working properly already. Just get rid of the ship managers. Sorry, rant over.
No, not at all. I love how passionate you are about it. And, you're right. Like, why are we having to write policies about good human behavior? Sexual harassment being one of them, which I'm going to be completely honest. We launched a global whistleblowing service specifically in line with that, but also for toxic behavior, for racism, for various other bits and bobs. And in my head, when we launch these things, I go, brilliant. What organization wouldn't want to know where the problems are and get ahead of that? And we have had one inquiry about the whistleblowing service. And you just think, even with the law changes at the moment, I just think that, from the sexual harassment side of things, organizations need to prove that they're taking proactive steps, not just to address sexual harassment, but actually to stop it from happening in the first place, such as whistleblowing services. And we're still very much slow to react, I think, as a sector. Would you agree?
We are slow to react. And again, this comes back to ship management. Really have to stop saying ship management. Management that isn't up to par. But part of, say, sexual harassment, the EHRC, Equality Human Rights Commission, set out 8 stages of what you should be doing to get this act in place. Number 8 is evaluate and review. So you can't quite do that yet, but the first 7 should be in place by now. And part of it is start the conversation. Start the conversation. So actually taking it down to your team level. Fine, HR and head office have got people in to tell all their managers that this is what the law is now. And they have a nice little training session, but it doesn't filter its way down. So I work for a brewery, not going to name names, but I work for a brewery. And last week they all went on all the general managers went on an employment law seminar where obviously sexual harassment was discussed. The following weekend, I see 2 guys grabbing each other's asses at work and the general manager putting his arm around a 17-year-old girl going, you can do this. You wouldn't be here if you weren't my favorite. And I didn't think you were able to do this. And I was like, what? Did you even listen there? And that's the thing. They haven't communicated it to the team. And with your whistleblowing thing, a whistleblowing helpline, you've had one person inquire. And that's actually brilliant. You say there's not many, but actually it's young. It's a month, 6 weeks old.
Yeah, I mean, it is young, and from a commercial level, we've still got to drive it, and it is for businesses to purchase to put it in place. But that
one person, that one business, that's actually really good because the amount of businesses, and you could turn around to probably 95% of our industry, of the hospitality industry, and say, what is whistleblowing? And they won't have a clue. There are still times as an HR professional that I have to double check whether something is a legal whistleblow or just a grievance or just a concern. So to get one person, one organization in such a short time is actually brilliant because they are caring, but people don't fully understand whistleblowing. And I'm not criticizing you or what you've done. I think it's awesome that you've done it. And I think it's awesome that there is something in place. So many venues and companies in our industry don't have anything in place for it, but that's because they don't understand it. They probably hasn't happened to them. They probably have had an issue and they've dealt with it reactively and then changed how they've worked before. Probably haven't had to go through a tribunal for it, but shit has gone down and they've had to change what it is, or they only got a 3-star EHO review. So they've listened to what the EHPs have said and they've made those changes. They haven't had to go through a formal whistleblowing process. But to have one organisation say, actually, yeah, we do want to know where the issues are, or inquiring about it, that is very impressive within the first month for an area of employment law that isn't overly well known.
Yeah, you make a really valuable point, and thank you for that. Is that I think we take it for granted that people understand what we're talking about when we talk about presenteeism and whistleblowing, etc. But actually, we've got to remember that we're in a hospitality industry. Hospitality, tourism, and leisure generally tend to have quite quick promotions. There isn't really much time to be trained properly on terminology, on leadership, etc. So we have to try and make sure that what we're doing is speaking to the masses. Otherwise, we're going to lose our audience. But it brings me back to shit leaders, shit managers. Okay. We hear of stories and people air their grievances with us all the time about the environments that they're in and just sense checking whether or not it's right. And we're not ACAS, we're not employment lawyers. So we have to be very careful, but we are able to have a dialogue with individuals about maybe that's something that you should raise because that doesn't seem quite right. There is also a big feeling of imposter syndrome within hospitality. According to research that we did with Bournemouth University, close to 70% of people within hospitality feel like they've got imposter syndrome. So how do we, in a granular detail, work out which are the shit managers that can improve and that can benefit from training and, adapting their behaviors and their processes, and which are the ones that are just not going to change at all, rather than just sort of a carte blanche, you're shit, you need to go? What can we do about that?
So there's two things that organizations need to do, or in my opinion, there's two things that organizations need to do to siphon off the shit managers, develop ship managers, and also make sure there are things in place so that the next generation don't fall into those traps. And that's putting structures in place and communications. And so, again, the brewery that I work for, you start off as a team member, you then become a shift leader, deputy general manager, general manager. Now, I've seen it time and time again with this company and with other companies. Oh, you're a great waiter, so I'm going to promote you. Or you've been here the longest, so you get promoted. You've got the best availability, you get promoted. That does not make a great manager. Longevity doesn't make a great manager. Good performance doesn't make a great manager. But you can train people, but you need to be able to talk to them. You need to be able to communicate with them. I remember one of my good managers, when I was with Wetherspoons, I was doing very, very well. And he turned around and went, you need to just step back and think about how you're speaking to people. You've got all of their respect now because you've proven that you can do the job, but you got their respect through fear, because I was very much an old school Gordon Ramsay kind of manager, telling them their shit to their face, like putting the fear of God in them. And this manager turned around and went, you've got their respect, but you got it the hard way. If you spoke to them like human beings, if you spoke to them with respect, they would have respected you quicker. And going forward, and for you to develop with Wetherspoons when I was with them, you need to change that mentality. And it did take me some time, and it did take me a while to stop calling people shit to their faces. I still do, but this time I give some constructive feedback as well, and they are happy about it. But you just need to step back and you need to be able to say, well, actually, this is where you need to develop. But you need to be able to talk to them and communicate with them, and you need to have a structure in place where you can record it. And I'm not saying have a formal meeting. I'm saying, how about an appraisal? How about weekly or monthly meetings with your management team to discuss your team? How about one-to-ones with them? And it doesn't always have to be formal. It can be, actually, 5 minutes before the end of the shift, just want to sit you down quickly. Think you did really well today. Could you possibly keep doing that? Or how do you think today went? It isn't so much on the management side of things, but when it comes to probationary reviews, if it's, say, a 3-month probationary review, everyone is saying, okay, we'll have a chat at the end of month 1, chat at the end of month 2, and then you'll pass at month 3. Sorry, where's the day 1 chat? Where's the day 1 chat saying these are our expectations? Where's the documentation to support what training they get, what training they need, what help they will need, what support they will need to get to the end of the 3 months to pass that probation? And I know what they called UK Hospitality are looking into this at the moment, but it needs to be ingrained in the system. And this is coming from an HR background and an operational background. So I remember when I was working for McDonald's, even on day 1, they told me what was expected. And they kept telling me what was expected. And they gave me the document and they gave me the training that was needed so that I could achieve. But I've worked for a lot of companies, and I've gone into companies where they have nothing in place. I've had one manager turn around and say, well, generally, if they can carry plates, pull a pint, and they turn up to work, they'll pass their probationary period. Okay, right. I think we've got a slight issue there. But yes, they're the basics that they should be passing, but let's challenge them a bit more. But then they go from, especially my company, the company I'm with at the moment, they go from a team member to a shift leader. Where's the people side of that? They're not trained how to deal with sickness. They're not trained to deal with neurodivergent staff. They need that in-between stage. They need that structure to actually allow them to learn and progress themselves so that they can find it in themselves to actually do it. As for getting rid of the shit managers, you can walk in to a pub and you can watch for 5 minutes and you can tell who is good, who is bad, and who can be changed just from the way they are. This good managers, you will see them. You can walk in and you will see a manager who will keep eye contact with you whilst you're talking to them. But then you'll also see their eyes flick because they're keeping an eye on what everything is happening and they know what is happening within their pub. You can see the ones that can develop are the ones that will just maintain eye contact and give you that time. The shit ones, they're the ones that will sit on their laptop over lunchtime. The shit ones are the ones that will just stick in one section or walk around. Why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? Well, pick up a fucking cloth and wipe the table yourself whilst you're walking around, you lazy arsehole. Just because you're a manager doesn't mean you don't have to wipe a table. You should own that as much as anyone else. And if you show ownership as a manager, the rest of your team will respect you and they will start showing ownership of your venue or your pub or your restaurant or your hotel or whatever it is. So, yeah, you can walk into a place and you can tell quickly who is a good manager and who isn't, in my opinion.
If you're enjoying this week's episode, consider heading over to our website and supporting our ongoing work in destigmatizing mental illness and creating a healthier, happier, and more sustainable industry by purchasing some of our branded merchandise. We have a whole range of t-shirts, hoodies, chef's jackets, well-being journals, plus a whole host more available on worldwide dispatch. All funds raised from sales of these items go towards free-to-access e-learning content, as well as providing free support systems and help for those who may be experiencing difficulty with their mental health.
It's a really, really valuable part. My career in hospitality was obviously from supply chain point of view, and I actually quite enjoyed my time of working for a Wetherspoons down in Bournemouth. But then it wasn't my main job. You know, I worked in insurance during the day, and then I got to blow out all the cobwebs in the evening, working from 6 at night until 3 o'clock in the morning. And I fucking loved it. Although, yeah, admittedly, I always struggled with stomach cramps and really sore legs as well. You know, turns out, yeah. But I do enjoy, and I don't claim, you know, again, I wouldn't ever presume that I could do a hospitality role any better than anyone else. But I do sit there and I watch, especially management teams, because I'm always curious about those. And there's a venue near me, and the manager was throwing his toys out the pram. I'd sat there for breakfast, had a coffee, and I'd not been asked for another drink in probably the best part of 40 minutes or so. And the place is empty. There's only two other tables, and the manager's, you know, having a go, storming off at various other bits and bobs, pulling up people for not doing things. And I'm like, the person who's paying the salary, the person who's going to come back and continue to write good reviews, etc., is sat right there, and you're not even serving them because you're too busy micromanaging your team and acting emotionally. Now, he might have just been having a bad day. He might have, something really serious might have happened, but you can spot the good managers who trust their teams, who have empowered, who have delegated, who have trained. And I always say that a really great manager, and there's a kind of an oxymoron with this, a really great manager is someone who can make themselves redundant and they wouldn't be missed. And not in a bad way.
Right there. I think you're completely right. A good manager, it should get to the point that if you're a good manager, you don't need to be there. You can start focusing on your P&Ls, and you don't have to worry about the Monday mornings where you're doing your end of weeks and your stock takes and things like that, because it's all going to run smoothly because you've got a great team in place. And yeah, at that point, that's when, if you're an independent, you could look at expanding. At that point, you can look at promotions if you're in a corporate structure. That is the sign of a good manager.
Yeah, true. And that's hard as well, right? Because when you say that on face value, people there are managers going, yeah, but I like to be wanted. It's good to feel like I'm in control, and I'm doing it for the right reasons because I care for my team, etc. And if I make myself redundant, then I'm out of work. But actually, what people need to realize and think longer term, first and foremost, to be a great manager and to make yourself redundant, or to get to the stage where your team are completely competent and capable and confident without you there, it takes a lot of time. It does take time. But also at the same time, if you've got all of your team with a perfect retention rate, with great feedback, with them endorsing you, then effectively you could walk into any other job and go, don't listen to me tell you about what I can do. Listen to my team tell you about what I can do. And can you imagine how far someone like that would go in the industry as it is currently? That's such a competitive edge.
And yeah, I completely agree with you. And without sounding up my own arse, it's actually the kind of thing I'm doing whilst looking at jobs at the moment, because as in HR, I want to stay in HR. I want to stay in hospitality because I love this industry. Despite its ups and downs, I love the hospitality industry. But you can only say, yes, I've got this qualification, or yeah, I did this. But actually talk to my team, because my last place, I introduced performance appraisals for the first time in 10 years. And some of the team were just like, we've never in 10 years had a formal sit down. It's like, okay, fabulous. That's what I've done. I've introduced reward and recognition things. I was looking for something earlier, and I found a document I did when I was with quite a big catering company, and it was called Positive Performance Culture. And it's like, this is what I brought in to literally develop our team. And it wasn't just rewarding them with bottles of wine and things like that and staff nights and things like that. It was making sure there were clear communications, making sure things were recorded, making sure ER was in place, making sure training was in place, putting staff trainers in. Like, you're a great person. You don't want to progress to management. How about you take the newbies under your wings and you look after their probation, empowering them to pass on their knowledge. And this is what I've had to do. And that, when I did that, that was for one of the largest contract caterers in the country. And it's like, how the fuck have we got this far without this basic stuff? And I've left them now. But the good thing is, I know that they're still doing a lot of the stuff that I did. I'm actually going for dinner with their old chef manager. And every time, she's like, yep, I've got this probationary review coming up because I put it in my diary, and this one's doing this, and this one's doing this. And I was like, I fucking love you. So yeah, it does put you out of jobs. You can put yourself out of a job, but in a good way. And it is something to say to your next employer, or if you're going for a loan to get a second restaurant, it is something to put in your business plan. And it's something that people will look at, is your reviews, look at your staff retention. They will look at that when it comes to development of people. So,
I fucking love you, man. You are so on, like, you literally, do you know what? In fact, actually, next time I have a public speaking gig, you, sir, are the guy who's going to be covering for me, because you say it makes so much sense. I did a talk at University of Birmingham, UCB, recently, and we were talking about what makes a positive culture. And I designed an hour-long presentation and I had 15 minutes, but in true style, I took 35. One of the slides, which sort of made me chuckle as I was designing it, was just 3 words on a page, and it was performance review at the top. I clicked the button and it got crossed out. Then it was coffee and catch up. I clicked the button and it crossed out. And then I had Lovely Jubbly and Del Boy popped out from the corner. And for those who don't know who Del Boy is, Google him if you're of that age. And the people were laughing. I was like, the point is that performance reviews, regular catch-ups are not an inherently bad thing. In fact, they're very positive because it's an opportunity to talk safely, to learn more, to develop, to plan, and to feedback, right? But we started to change the name of performance reviews to coffee and catch-ups because performance reviews were scary. People didn't like going into them. And so we changed it to coffee and catch-up. And now when people talk about coffee and catch-up, they go, I don't like them. So it doesn't matter what you fucking call these things. If you're conducting them in a way that's, listen, you sit down and as your manager, I'm going to tell you all the crap things that you've done and you need to improve, rather than sitting down and going, hey, how are you getting on? Like, what's going on in your world? Where do you see yourself in 2 years' time? How are you finding the job? How are you finding me as a manager? Am I managing you in the right way? Could I do better? And having just an open, authentic conversation. And it's so rare still.
You're spot on. You're spot on because, say, back in January, I had a chat with our HR manager for the brewery. And I turned around and said, stop calling it performance management. It's performance development. Because if you turn around to someone and say, I want to help develop your performance, they're going to be receptive. If you turn around and say, I need to manage your performance, they're out the door so that they can get their notice period rather than being sacked. Because that's what they think. And like you said, it's not what you call it, it's how it's conducted. It's the culture behind it. Titles mean cool. Absolutely fuck all. It's the end result that you need. And it is how you manage it. It is how they perceive it. And like I said, the performance development versus performance management, the way it sounds to someone, the way people take it in is very different. So one will be receptive, one won't be receptive. And back to one of my old ship managers, I actually suggested, as her HR manager or people and culture manager was my title there, I actually suggested 1 hour a week. She goes down to one of the outlets and sits there with a coffee, and any member of the team can go and chat to her. Bring their ideas, bring their grievances. No, not a hope in hell. They'll just be complaining at me. And I was like, well, if they're complaining at you, there's a problem. You need to know about it. Shut up and listen. Nope, not happening. Not happening. I don't have time. What, you don't have time to manage your staff? You don't have time to listen to your staff? Fuck off. Get out of my industry. Get out of this industry. Go and sit remotely and do something online because that's all you're good for. Because if you don't have time for your staff, fuck off. Sorry, I really need to stop swearing quite so much.
No, you go for it. You have carte blanche. Carte blanche. It shows how passionate you are about this. And we are as an industry improving. You know, sometimes you'll meet an old school chef and in one of your training sessions, they're like, I don't know why everyone's complaining. It's not as bad as it was 10 years ago. And I was like, why? What was happening 10 years ago? I mean, we're regularly being punched and kicked and stuff thrown at us. I was like, okay, but does that mean we should stop in the pursuit of exceptional? Because we are an exceptional industry and we have exceptional people within this profession. Does that mean we should just stop? Like, you talk about performance, conduct and reviews and management styles. Like when I was in the insurance industry for 4 years, 2 of those years was being trained in how to manage and how to conduct interviews and things like that with your SMART objectives and being able to have a conversation and the process and, you know, you're questioning and, you know, how do you feel that we could get there together? What support do you need from me? Where do you want to see yourself next time we catch up? Yeah, being able to also have that emotional intelligence to know that sometimes you're going to hear stuff that is not great, but that's an opportunity to improve. And you sort of take those and you go, what happens if in the next 10 years as a hospitality industry, we can still have banter And when I say banter, I don't mean, pushing someone into a cold store and locking them in. I mean, you can still have good rapport and have a laugh with your colleagues, etc. But also, because the industry is much more professional, broadly speaking, it's not such a negative thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're bringing it into a profession of choice, and one that our children would be comfortable joining.
Yeah, and I think you've picked up on two things there, and I'm quite, as a whole for the industry, I'm quite looking forward to the new generation of managers coming through, because one, most of them have gone through COVID, so very different life experience to you and I at our age group and our demographic, but also they know what banter is, which isn't offensive, because they're of a generation that knows how to take offense at most things. Sorry, but yeah, they're the ones that coined "I'm offended." But they can still have banter, they can still have laugh and fun in the workplace. And I've forgotten what the other thing was. Oh yes, that's what it was creating a industry that people love and actually want to join. Yes, that would be amazing. I would love to see that happening. We've got a hell of a long way to go before that. We need to create accreditations and certifications within the industry, not just doing your food safety level 2 for 20 minutes online. You need to get this accreditation. If you were becoming an architect, you need to be qualified. If you're becoming a teacher, you need to be qualified. We need to have something like that in our industry to show that people and regulating bodies care about it. But as soon as we get those things in, and I am living in dream world here saying I'd love this to happen, but as soon as we get them in, people will turn around and say, well, actually, I want to be a chef. I want to have my own business, but I want it to be a hospitality business. And I've seen people come in that have, and I've worked for a few of them, worked for a multimillionaire who bought a really lovely restaurant down in Cornwall, B&B, loads of money, not a fucking clue about hospitality. But he had money, so he could buy it. He got his personal license by doing a one-day course and passing an exam, and he was allowed a premises, and he was running it into the ground. He was abysmal. But myself, someone like yourself, someone of our age group, do you have a spare 500 grand to go and buy a venue? No, so we don't get it. But if there's accreditation, we can say, actually, you can't be shit. We care about this industry. You have to be able to prove that you know this, know this, know this. This guy didn't know how to change a barrel. This guy didn't know how to cash up a till. But he's running it? Fuck off. Have these basic skills in place so that we can create an industry that is cared about, that is respected, and that our children, our grandchildren, our families, our friends, our next generation say, yes, I'm a hospitality worker, respect me, because I work bloody hard and I have worked hard for this and I have trained and I care. And that's what I would love to see happening in this industry.
Oh, Ian, we've got so much exciting stuff for you. Well, not just for you, for everyone. I can't believe I haven't told you about this. So 2 years ago, I designed an accreditation scheme for this sector that focused on great standards, qualities, some basic expectations that you would have, such as the legal right to have 11 hours off between the end of one shift and the start of another, things that you would...
Time off in hospitality? Fuck off.
I know, right? But sometimes I've redesigned it and redesigned it because I'm like, oh, it's not granular enough, because you'll hear stories of people who don't know where the policies are, have no stress risk assessments in place, don't give their teams time off, give their rotas 1 or 2 days in advance, or maybe a week, which is reasonable in today's standards, but still, we should be looking at 3-6 months. So it's built. I just haven't ever clicked go on it because I just don't know. I don't know. So what I'd like to do after this is I'd like to send what I've built, and I'd like you to be as frank and honest as possible and say to me, this is a crock of shit, or I actually think this is good. Here are some tweaks. So there's the core sort of charter, if you like, that has to be proven based on data and submissions by head offices is in place. But what we're going to do is underpin that by an anonymous survey that goes out to all team members as well. So if you're telling us that your policies are good and that they're strong and robust, and you've got mental health first aiders, and everyone knows, where the time off and sickness and absence policies, etc., are, but your team saying, my manager hasn't spoken to me in 4 years, and I don't know when my next review is, and I don't know what to do if I'm off sick, then there's a disparity. And rather than us being able to say to them, you're shit, you haven't passed, we'll feed that back to them and say, look, overall, respondents in these particular areas are saying X, Y, and Z. Come back to us in 12 months if you feel that you've managed to resolve these, and then we'll just put you through a final piece. But someone with your brain and your experience, your
passion, send it over. Let's get accreditation for our industry. Let's bring that respect and that qualification, and let's just bloody do it. Get it sent over. I can benchmark it against other organization, other industries. I can, send it over. Get that to me. That is sure. That's bloody exciting. And you realize your team behind you are probably screaming now. And I've got so many friends that would be like, stop it here and stop being a twat, stop having these ideas and going for these massive things. But fuck them. Let's just do it.
Well, we consulted with the likes of people and talent partners from Marsden's and KFC and Burger King and Liberation Group. So we got everyone together in a room in London a year and a half ago, and I said, this is what we're going to do, and everyone was like, yay. And then I sat on it. So there's something that's holding me back, and it's because I guess I want it to be right, and I want it to be just, and I want it to be fair, and I want it to be progressive, and I want it to be productive as well. And until I can satisfy all of those things, I'd rather not sort of just throw something else out into the industry. But the reason for developing it specifically for hospitality was, and it's not like a closed door. So, sometimes you go for accreditations where you're applying, but you don't know what the criteria is. We give you the criteria free of charge. So if you don't think you're ready, that's fine. Work through the criteria and come back to us when you feel like you've got a good foothold. And also with things like B Corp, etc. B Corp's great. There's nothing to distract B Corp. The feedback and the data that you get from that process is incredible. However, when it comes down to health and well-being of your teams, if you score really high in environmental and you score really high in sustainability, etc., but you've got really shit culture and really shit mental health and well-being, the score bumps up. So we needed something that was specific for hospitality, that was easy to access, that was affordable, that was, again, just gives people the data and information that they need to be better and to improve, because not everyone's going to pass straight away, and that's okay. The fact is that they're on the road. And so,
they're wanting to do it. They're wanting to get better, and that's the main thing, I think.
For sure, man. For sure. So, I'm going to send it over to you. You can have a look. I could talk to you for hours. There's so many other subjects that I would love to have a chat to you about, but I'm conscious that we're already over an hour, and my editing team are going to be going, oh, God, we've got to keep editing this. So I promise Run for the Road. Run for the Road, I think, is an incredible initiative, and I share your vision in terms of where it needs and where it will get to. I mean, and you've already progressed it so far, but just explain the idea behind Run to the Road and what it is before we say to sort of people how they can get involved.
So before I say what it is, I'll give a bit of background of, and I said it earlier in the podcast, of when I finished the Brighton Marathon, I slumped. My mental health, mental well-being wasn't there, because I had literally gone from a strict-ish routine to nothing. I had nothing to work towards. And yes, I signed up for the ultra at that point. But what I realized was I was drinking a lot more, and I was lonely. I was really bloody lonely. And that's something that has been in the background throughout my career in hospitality. I've always kind of been alone, but there'd be times where loneliness kicked in. So after work, you'd stop for 1 pint and that would turn into 5 pints, or I'd go home and I'd sit on my own with no one there, not talking to anyone, and I got into quite bad ways with addictions and things like that. And after the Brighton Marathon, I saw it coming, and I was just like, no, I can't. I've moved forward. I can't go back to what I was like. And there was a realization of, wait a second, this can't just be me. I can't be the only person in this industry that relies on alcohol and post-service drinking to socialize. And I can't be the only person in the industry who suffers from loneliness and would go home alone. And I said, what can we do about it? And at that point, I had just started doing parkrun every Saturday morning. And again, I did it on my own at that point. And it was nice to get out and be running again. And I was like, why don't we do something like this? And so the idea is every Monday night at 9:30 in the evening, so after service, because if you're in the kitchen, generally service finishes at 9 o'clock, you can clean down and be there by 9:30. If you're front of house and you're not closing, generally you're finishing at 9 o'clock, so you can get changed, come along. We start from a pub, we go and do 5K run or plod or jog or walk, whatever you feel you're capable of. And it ends up back at the pub. So I'm not saying you can't drink. I'm saying this diminishes that 5 pints. It gives it something else. And there's always time for that 1 pint if you want it. Generally, after Run for the Road, I don't actually have a pint. I'll go back to my Diet Coke, generally. Sometimes that's different. But also, there's people there. And sometimes walking into a new pub can be weird. But there's going to be people there that will welcome you, that will chat with you. If you've just finished service, now most services are very similar. We all can have that bitch about that one table that doesn't want the fucking parsley on the plate, or that one allergy which isn't an actual allergy, you're just a fucking fussy eater. So we can all have that bitch. We all have that common ground that we're dealing with people and we've just had to put on a smile for however many hours, or we've just stood under a hot light for however many hours. And rather than just turning to having those 5 pints and going and getting a bag or whatever, let's go for a 5K. Let's go and do a bit of physical exercise. And I know people would have been on their feet all day, but it's a very different form of being on your feet. And this is doing it with people. There's always going to be at least one other person there, because in London, there will always be me. In Bournemouth, there will always be Michael, who actually started as a London runner. He's a student in Bournemouth, but he's picked it up. And when he's not there, we'll have other people. So there's always going to be one person you can run with, one person you can chat to. Now, I'm not saying it's a counselling session. I'm saying it's an open invitation for people to come, get a bit of physical health in there, still enjoy the pub culture, still have that rant after work if they need it, or to celebrate that they've done their first Julienning if they're an apprentice. That was a really bad example, but
it was an obscure one.
But yeah, it's that chance to create a community, to change the post-work culture of alcoholism, of self-medication, of destroying loneliness. And it may only be one night a week, but at least that one night a week, there is going to be someone that you can spend some time with, go for a run, go for a walk. And I have said to so many people that I will go at the pace of the slowest runner. So if that's a walker, I will go, I will happily walk it. Unfortunately, sometimes I am the slowest runner, but so they go at my pace unless they know the route. But yeah, that's how it started. And it started on July the 8th in London from Ship and Shovel, which is a Holdenwood house. And the landlady there was all for it. She had literally just done her mental health first aid course. So it was very on topic for her. And we did the first one, it was just me. The second one, we had a few turn up. And you know what? It was lovely. We all ran together. They saw the sights. So we got London Eye in, Houses of Parliament, Trafalgar Square, Leicester Square, Whitehall. And we got back, and the landlady and her 2 team members saw us run in, and they gave us a round of applause. And every week when we go in, how was it? Well done. It's life affirming. Just their reaction to it's a Monday night and you've just done a run, and they are so proud of you. They don't know you, but they're so proud of you, and it feels absolutely awesome. And then earlier this month, at some point, November the 11th, that's when it was, we took it down to Bournemouth, and they're doing really, really, really well. New faces every week. London's kind of stagnant, but I'm hoping that will change after the podcast goes out, and in the new year, and with me just constantly hassling people to turn up. But they're doing really, really well. And the aim is, or my personal aim, and I don't know if we're going to achieve it, but hopefully we will. And I don't care when we achieve it, but I wanted 2,000 runners on a Monday night across the world going for a 5K after service, or 2,000 hospitality workers saying, it's a Monday night, I'm not having 5 pints, I'm having a 5K. It's not one for the road, it's run for the road. And I really need to work out my sales pitch.
I think your sales pitch is perfect. Yeah, as for someone who struggles with isolation and loneliness, especially if conferences or you're speaking in front of a few hundred people and you go back to a hotel room and just sit there in silence on your own, it's horrendous, especially for someone who's, my brain works constantly. So it's terrifying. It's really hard. This is such a great thing, and it gives you something to lock onto and something to look forward to and something to know that, you know, if you default back into sort of help-seeking behaviours, it's likely to make the run on Monday, the following Monday, a lot harder. So it's such a fantastic idea. And well done, you.
Thank you. And
Well
thank
done.
you for actually getting behind it and letting me do it in the first place, using your name and supporting what you guys do. Everyone who turns up gets one of these beautiful Burn Chef wristbands, which I am constantly wearing. But everyone who turns up gets one, because they may not know about you guys. They may not ever need you guys. And I hope, without sounding rude, I hope they never need you guys. But if they do, they have something on them to remind them that there are other people out there. There is professional help out there that they can go to. And it's not just an individual thing. You aren't alone. And that's part of it. And I want everyone to know that they're not alone. And I found, just through personal experience, that running is a community. There were bits when I did Brighton, I was quite close to the end, and I turned around to some strangers and went, please tell me I'm almost there. And they're like, it's just down there, go on, run, you've got this. And I was like, that's part of the community, encouraging this absolute random, sweaty, fat mess to just run for it. And then I did a half in Bournemouth a while ago, and these two really healthy runners were in front of me, and they just heard this flubber-dubs panting behind them. And they looked around and went, I'm really sorry, I think I'm on for a PB. And they just jumped to the side and they literally shouted, everyone get to the side, we've got a PB coming through. And literally just people jumped to the side. It's part of the community. And I want people to feel that they're not alone. I want them to feel that they are open, and it doesn't matter about ability. It doesn't matter about your background, where you're from, what you do. This brings people together in a safe and welcoming environment. And that's what I really wanted people to know. And that's what I want people to experience when they come along. And I do want it to grow. I want it to become worldwide. I want those 2,000 runners by July the 8th. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do want that to happen. And I want people to just try it. Like that Couch to 5K for me, the hardest part was starting. For this, the hardest part is turning up. But there's always going to be a welcoming face. There's always going to be people there to support you. If for some reason we've had to cancel it, we will put it all over social media so that you know. But especially the London one, I will phone the landlady and she will still make you feel absolutely welcome. Oh, he is so adorable. Chris has just picked up the truffle, so you know if you're listening.
And she's attacking everything in the office. So you say hello?
Hello, Truffle.
This is Truffle. But I think it's such a fantastic idea. It's much needed. We want to try and support it as much as possible to get to that number, you know, to have hospitality people who, no matter what their role is within hospitality, tourism or leisure, to be able to come along and to take part and to meet new people. And I think that's one of the, you said earlier, thank you for letting me use your name and promoting this. But the Burnt Chef Project is a community interest company, which means it's for the benefit of a community, whether that's 5 people in North London or in our case, sort of 450,000 worldwide. It's run and supported by the community. And I think that one of the proudest things of the Burnt Chef Project is that we have individuals like yourself. We have our incredible ambassador network. all doing things to support others within the hospitality community. It's a self-fulfilling loop. And that's just amazing. That's incredible. It really is. So thank you. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you for turning up and showing up every single Monday, for running it, for having the vision, for running an absolute monumental distance, well, previously, and also doubling that this time. And honestly, Ian, thank you. And if anyone feels inspired by this or they want to reach out, you're currently looking for new roles in HR and hospitality. How can they get hold of you?
They can get hold of me through LinkedIn. I'm on all social medias apart from TikTok because that really confuses me. Or they can email me. I'm pretty sure almost everyone at Burnt Chef has my email address because I've probably contacted all of them at some point. But yeah, social medias, LinkedIn, all of that. Yeah, that's how to contact me. I'm Ian Lay. Hi.
Thank you. And I have two team members here actually that would like to say hello to you as well. Both of them, when I said I was interviewing you today, they were like, Ian Lay. So we have Ira and Ruby.
Hello.
Everyone in our organization knows who you are, and that's incredible, and we all love you dearly. So thank you. Thanks for making yourself available for today as well. And yeah, looking forward. I may even come down to Bournemouth one evening or London and strap on some shoes and try and keep up with you.
Let's change that from May to Will.
Yeah, okay. All right, we'll get it done. We'll get it done. Let's get Christmas out of the way. Let's get the end of the year wrapped up, and then
then look at it in the new year.
January/Feb.
That would be awesome.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate your time today.